I am going to answer a critical question that I know all of you have. But first, let me set the scene. In stealth games, your greatest asset is timing. Avoiding detection and completing the mission are essential, and stealth games are often pretty stingy about how much time they give you before an enemy will sound the alarm. Today I'll be answering a question that's been on my mind since before Agent 47 shaved his head. How long does it take for you to be detected in stealth games? I tested in 10 different games to see how long it took for NPCs in each game to fully detect you and realize that you as the player were about to ruin their day. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to come along for the ride and take a look at how long you have in these stealth games before you're compromised. Some of these results may surprise you. I hope you enjoy the video. Make sure to comment below with your favorite stealth game. Sit back, relax, enjoy the video, and as always, good hunting. First up on our list today is Assassin's Creed 3. And I guess technically it's Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered. Assassin's Creed 3 is an action-adventure game set during the American Revolutionary War. It was initially released on October 30th of 2012, with the remastered version being released on the 29th of March in 2019. In Assassin's Creed 3, you play as Connor, a half-Mohawk, half-English assassin who becomes involved in the centuries-old conflict between the Assassins and the Templars, who seek order through control. Now, Assassin's Creed 3 is one of my personal favorites. As I was actually playing, I was doing some research for this video and discovered that the reviews for Assassin's Creed 3 are not as high as I expected them to be. It is one of my favorites. I really enjoyed it, and it was fun to play it again after all these years. And this one's a little interesting. So with all of these games that we tested, I tried to keep the difficulty setting on the highest one that I could find, just to have all the games at max difficulty. This one was a little interesting in which it had the notoriety system. So essentially the more trouble that you get in, the quicker the enemies will detect you and chase you and pursue you. So if I remember correctly, I think in all the testing situations I did for this game, I was at notoriety 1 or 2. And honestly, the results of this one were a little surprising to me. So for each of these games, one improvement I made from our last experiment is I did keep the number of attempts the same, make sure it was consistent across all the games. So for each of these games we tested, we did 3 different attempts. And those attempts would basically be me standing there, letting the enemy detect me, and then going in and timing each one, and I'll be putting those timers on the screen for you to see as well. So with the attempts I did in Assassin's Creed 3, our first attempt took a whopping 22.10 seconds for the enemy to fully detect us and begin attacking. The second attempt took only 6.35 seconds. And then the third attempt, which was the longest, took 22.51 seconds. So these numbers were super high, and I tried to keep distance from the enemy fairly consistent. It wasn't a super big focal point, so I know that there were some situations where I was definitely closer, which may have played a factor in how fast we got detected. But overall, having such a high detection time was kind of shocking. I thought it would be much quicker than that from what I remember. Obviously, it's been a long time since I'd played this game, and for this test, we're only using one Assassin's Creed game. It would be interesting to go and play each one that we have access to see if that timing matches up between the games or if they've changed it between each title. But with all that being said, the average detection time for Assassin's Creed came out to be 16.99 seconds. Next up on our list is a game that I was super excited to jump back into again because it had been such a long time, and that game is Dishonored. Dishonored was released on October 9th of 2012, and honestly to this day, it's still one of my favorite stealth games that you can play. Dishonored is a first-person stealth action game set in the plague-ridden, steampunk-inspired city of Dunwall. You play as Corvo Attano, the loyal bodyguard of the Empress of the Isles, but after the Empress is assassinated and her daughter Emily is kidnapped, Corvo is framed for the crime and imprisoned. So if you're watching this video and you've never played Dishonored before, I would highly recommend to go back and play it. It is on Steam, and getting footage for this video was a ton of fun. It was really tempting to keep playing, and I had to stop myself because I needed to obviously make this video, but it was really hard to not just keep playing the story because it had been such a long time, and the gameplay is still just super fun, even to this day. Oh, and I forgot to mention, obviously Assassin's Creed was made by Ubisoft. Dishonored was developed by Arcane Studios and published by Bethesda. So let's get to the results for the detection speed in Dishonored. So with our first attempt, it took 2.10 seconds, so much faster than Assassin's Creed 3. The second attempt was 0.86 seconds, so much faster, and the third attempt came out to be 1.11 seconds, So the average detection time for Dishonored came out to be 1.36. We'll make sure to compare all the games at the end of the video, so stick around to see the total results, see where everything matches up. Coming up next on our list is Far Cry 5. Now this is a similar situation to Assassin's Creed where it would be interesting to see the differences between each Far Cry game, but Far Cry 5 is one of my favorites and it's the one that I had easily accessible at the time, so I decided to use that one for our test today. Far Cry 5 was released on March 27th of 2018. Far Cry 5 is a first-person open-world shooter set in the fictional rural region of Hope County, Montana. You play as the deputy sheriff sent in to arrest Joseph Seed, charismatic and dangerous leader of a doomsday cult called the Project at Eden's Gate. If you have not played Far Cry 5 before, it's very hard to say. I don't know, I'm struggling so hard to say that. I keep saying Far Cry 5. Far Cry 5. If you have not played Far Cry 5 before, I highly recommend it. It is one of my favorites. The Far Cry franchise in general is a super fun one, but this one is definitely one of my favorites. So, for Far Cry 5, on our first attempt, it took about 1.61 seconds for the enemy to detect us. As you can see, it took a little bit. We were kind of just standing there, and honestly, I was shocked that it took that long for them to even look our way. Our second attempt was 0.95 seconds, and then our third attempt was 1.26. So this one was honestly kind of comparable to Dishonored. I feel like they had pretty similar ranges across each attempt. So on average, it took about 1.27 seconds across all of our attempts for the enemy to be fully aware of us. Next on our list is one of my favorite stealth games, and it's also from one of the major stealth franchises in gaming. And this game is Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Metal Gear Solid 5 was released on September 1st of 2015. It is an open-world stealth action game set in 1984 during the Cold War. You play as Venom Snake, also known as Big Boss, who awakens from a 9-year coma after the events of Ground Zeroes, a prequel that ends with his base destroyed and many of his comrades killed. Now, the Metal Gear series is obviously a very prominent stealth game in gaming as a whole, so it felt wrong for me to not include a Metal Gear game in this test. So let's go ahead and look at the results for the Metal Gear Solid 5 tests. So this one was interesting. The results for this one were a little surprising to me. The data is a little interesting because on my first attempt, I had already alerted one of the guards. I feel like that must have played a factor in how quickly he realized that I was an enemy. But on our very first attempt, it took 0.70 seconds, so incredibly fast. This was a situation where the guard turned around, saw me, and pretty much instantly detected me. On attempt number 2, it took 22.71 seconds for them to be fully alerted. So they sat there, they looked, they even walked towards me, but it took a very long time for them to actually realize that I was an enemy. And attempt number 3 took 11.85 seconds. So not nearly as long, but still a decently long time to be fully detected. And from everything I saw, I couldn't find like a specific difficulty setting for the game in general. From what I had seen, the difficulty obviously kind of depends on your playstyle, and there are specific missions that have different difficulty parameters applied, but as a whole, the difficulty should be about the same for everybody. Next up on our list is Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Ghost Recon Breakpoint was released on October 4th of 2019. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is a tactical third-person shooter set on the fictional Pacific island of Aroa, a high-tech utopia owned by the tech corporation Scale Technology. In Ghost Recon Breakpoint, you play as Nomad, a member of the elite US Special Forces unit known as the Ghosts. Now, Ghost Recon Breakpoint is a game that is highly prevalent on my channel, and Ghost Recon as a whole is a very popular franchise. When I was getting ready to do this test, this was one of the first franchises that came to mind, because with Wildlands and with Breakpoint, it had this detection system, which is pretty common in a lot of different Ubisoft games like Splinter Cell, so I was curious to see just how long that detection meter would take before enemies were fully aware of your presence. For this test, we did put the enemies on extreme difficulty, and let's go ahead and get to the results. So for Ghost Recon Breakpoint, attempt number 1 took about 3.16 seconds. Attempt number 2 took about 1.85 seconds. And attempt number 3 took about 1.25 seconds. So with those 3 attempts, the average detection time came out to be 2.09 seconds.
This place. Shit.
Moving on to the next game on our list, it's another Ubisoft game, and it is Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Blacklist. Splinter Cell Blacklist is a stealth action game starring Sam Fisher, the iconic operative of the secretive US agency 4th Echelon. As the newly appointed leader of 4th Echelon, Sam is tasked with stopping the Blacklist attacks before they escalate. So the entire Splinter Cell franchise is really one of the main pillars of stealth games, and you can't really think about the stealth gaming genre without talking about Splinter Cell. So I knew I definitely wanted to include at least one of the Splinter Cell games in my tests. Blacklist is the most recent Splinter Cell release, and it was released on August 20th of 2013. So we have not gotten a new Splinter Cell game in quite some time. I do know that an original Splinter Cell remake is on the way, so we'll see how that goes. So for these tests, I was playing on the realistic difficulty, and Splinter Cell has a similar detection system to Ghost Recon, so let's go ahead and look at the results for Splinter Cell. So attempt number 1 took about 1.16 seconds. Attempt number 2 took 2.33. And attempt number 3 took 1.33 seconds. So the average detection time came out to be about 1.61 seconds. And I will say, when it comes to the Splinter Cell franchise, I think Conviction is my favorite Splinter Cell game, but jumping back into Blacklist was a ton of fun, and I'd highly recommend it for anyone who hasn't tried it yet. And for a game from 2013, it still feels pretty good, looks pretty good, and at the end of the day, it's a Splinter Cell game, so you're in for a good time. Next on our list is one of my favorite games and one of my favorite stealth games, and it's Sniper Elite 5. The Sniper Elite franchise is one of my favorites, and it's incredibly fun. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. You can really play any of them. Sniper Elite 5 I think is my favorite at the moment, but they'll often go on sale, and sometimes they'll even go on sale in a bundle, so I'd keep an eye out for that, but they're a ton of fun. Sniper Elite 5 was released on May 26th of 2022, and it's a tactical third-person shooter set in 1944 during World War II. You play as an elite marksman, Carl Fairburn, an OSS operative working behind enemy lines. Sniper Elite 5 takes place in France, where Carl is helping the resistance weaken Nazi defenses ahead of the D-Day invasion. Now, Sniper Elite 5 has a similar detection system that we would see in like Ghost Recon or Splinter Cell or Hitman, so it makes it a perfect game to test detection times, to test just how quickly they become fully alert. So with Sniper Elite 5, our first attempt took 4.51 seconds. The second attempt took 2.58 seconds. And the third attempt took 3.98 seconds. This was played on authentic difficulty, so the highest difficulty you can play, and the average detection time came out to be 3.69 seconds. Next up on our list is another tactical sniping game, and it is Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts. Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts was released on November 22nd, 2019, and it's a tactical first-person shooter set in the rugged fictional region of Siberia, which is broken away from Russia and is ruled by a corrupt, militarized regime. You play as a mysterious mercenary known only as the Seeker. The Sniper Ghost Warrior games are a ton of fun. They're another similar series to like Sniper Elite, where you play as an elite marksman, and your playstyle really determines how things go for you. You can try to be stealthy and quiet, you can go loud if you want, but ultimately there is that freedom to kind of play however you'd like. For this test, I was playing on the Deadeye difficulty, and let's see what our results were. So our first attempt took about 3.66 seconds. Our second attempt took 3.46 seconds. And our third attempt took 4.08 seconds. So these attempts were pretty close together, and it was fairly consistent as far as timing goes. There wasn't a huge discrepancy between the attempts, which I thought was interesting. So with all those results combined, our average came out to be 3.73 seconds. Next on our list, and making another appearance from our last video, is Trepang 2. Trepang 2 was released on June 21st, 2023, and is a fast-paced first-person shooter that blends supernatural powers, brutal gunfights, and stylized slow-motion combat in the spirit of classic shooters like Fear. You play as a mysterious, enhanced soldier known only as Subject 106, who escapes from a high-security black site with no memory of his past. So Trepang 2 was an interesting one to test because the AI in this game are honestly pretty fascinating. They're very good at searching for you when they're on alert, and they're really good at flanking you in combat, and depending on the difficulty mode, those abilities can just be enhanced. So there are several different difficulties you can play on. I wanted to choose the hardest one, and they call it Rage Mode. But if you ever plan to play on Rage Mode on an actual mission or try to play through a campaign, the dev team is quick to warn you that this mode was recommended to be removed because it's so difficult. So please play at your own risk. So let's get to the results of this Rage Mode detection test. Our first attempt took about 1.66 seconds.
Subject 106 sighted.
Our second attempt took 0.76 seconds. And our third attempt took 0.23 seconds, which was insanely fast. The detection meter in Trepang 2 is visible, but it's a little hard to tell exactly when they're fully alerted. So the way I went about it for this test is I took it from the frame that the detection meter was visible up until they fire their first shot, which makes the 0.23 seconds result even crazier. So with those three results, our average detection time on Rage Mode in Trepang 2 came out to be 0.88 seconds. I feel like this video is turning into just a Ubisoft game series, but here we go. The next game on our list is Watch Dogs. And honestly, I think this video ended up also being an excuse for me to revisit some of my favorite games, because a lot of these games on my list I hadn't played in a really long time, and I wanted to revisit. And they just happened to work for our video. Watch Dogs was released on May 26th of 2014, and as I'm going through all these games, I'm realizing that a span of like 2012 to like 2015 was a really good span of years for gaming. Watch Dogs is an open world action adventure game set in a near future version of Chicago, where the city is controlled by a centralized operating system called CTOS. You play as Aiden Pierce, a skilled hacker and vigilante seeking revenge after a hacking job gone wrong leads to a tragic event, the death of his niece. Now, if you're watching this video and you've never played Watch Dogs before, I would highly recommend it, because even to this day, it is still super fun. And I played Watch Dogs 2, and long story short, I was going to use that for this video, but the PC version is like super broken. So we went back to the original. So let's get to the results of our stealth detection test. So for Watch Dogs, our first attempt took 2.78 seconds. Our second attempt took 1.33 seconds. And our third attempt took 1.86 seconds. This was played on the realistic difficulty mode. The average came out to be 1.99 seconds for full detection. So there you have it. The 10 games that we plan to do for this test are done. And I think that covers just about every stealth game that I could think of. Wait a minute. Okay, so after the super embarrassing memory lapse, I seem to have forgotten a game that inspired this whole idea. So partially because my memory sucks, but also because I love you guys so much, we're going to do a bonus game. An 11th game to test. So if at one point in the video you weren't already thinking, man, he's forgetting one of the most obvious stealth games that he could do, here it is. It's Hitman 3. Hitman 3 was released on January 20th of 2021. Hitman 3 is a stealth assassination game and the conclusion to the World of Assassination trilogy. You play as Agent 47, a genetically engineered assassin working with his handler Diana Burnwood and ally Lucas Gray to dismantle Providence, a secret organization that manipulates global events from the shadows. So there are several franchises that we've covered today that are kind of what I consider to be the pillars of stealth games, and Hitman definitely falls into that category. Let's check out the results. So for Hitman 3, I was playing on the master difficulty, and our first attempt took 2.55 seconds. Our second attempt took 3.46. And our third attempt took 2.45 seconds, with the average coming out to 2.82. And again, just a plug for Hitman 3, if you have not played any of the Hitman games, but especially these newest Hitman games, I highly recommend them. They are a ton of fun. They give you an extreme amount of freedom to play however you want, and half the time I end up just kind of messing around and doing stupid stuff. So now there you have it. We have completed our stealth detection tests. So let's look at the final results. We'll look at who had the slowest detection time, who had the fastest. We'll take a look at the average across all the different games and see where everything came out. So I'll go ahead and put my table of data on the screen now, and we'll take a look at the results. So the average detection time across all the different games we tested is 4.38. But from what I saw in the different games, let's say for example, if you walk into like a restricted area, having about 4 seconds to respond, I feel like would be pretty standard. Obviously some games were outliers in that fact, and we'll talk about the fastest and slowest right now. So the slowest reaction time of all the games that we tested was Assassin's Creed 3. That one has a little bit of a different difficulty system. It has the notoriety system. If you have a higher notoriety, you're going to get detected quicker. So they had the highest average at 16.99 seconds, so almost a full 17 seconds before they did anything. And the fastest detection time was in Trepang 2 on the Rage Mode difficulty, where at one point an enemy saw me and shot at me within 0.23 seconds. So Assassin's Creed 3 was the slowest, Trepang 2 was the fastest, and the average detection time was 4.38 seconds. I honestly thought that this was a really interesting test. It was interesting to see how different games handle the detection system, and it was interesting to see how different AI respond and how quickly they respond or how slowly they respond. I think as far as surprises go, Assassin's Creed was a little surprising that it was that slow. Metal Gear Solid was also surprising that it took quite a bit of time for a guard to fully react. The rest of them I feel like made pretty good sense. And overall, I think it was just really interesting to see how different games behaved. So I hope you enjoyed this test. I hope you enjoyed this video today. It's been a lot of fun to kind of dig into games and just see how they behave when they're compared with each other. And I hope this makes you think just a little bit differently about how you approach stealth games. And when you jump into your next stealth game, I think you should consider how long it's taking for enemies to detect you. And maybe you can use that to your advantage. Thank you all so much for watching the video. As always, I love any feedback you have, so if there are games that I missed that I should go back and test, definitely let me know in a comment. If there are certain games that were surprising as far as how fast or slow they were, definitely let me know as well. Or just give me overall feedback on the experiment and what you thought about it. I appreciate you all so much, and as always, good hunting. Oh my gosh, I didn't do Hitman 3. I'm an idiot. Okay, it's gonna be... Hitman 3 is gonna be in the video. It'll be a bonus 11th game. I just realized that I made this whole list. I made this whole list of stealth games to do. I narrowed it down to 10, and I didn't put Hitman 3 on it. And I even made an Agent 47 joke. Oh my gosh, what am I doing?